baby. Hey, can you guys hear me?
Oh, baby.
Hey,
Hey there, Dr. Walt.
say hello to YouTube.
YouTube.
Mr. Wilson? Is he going to make his grand entrance?
Better be careful what you wish for.
That's very true. What's the game looking like? Hodges?
I'm at 31%.
All right. Sweet.
I'm gonna just let it ride, and hopefully it'll work, and we'll be there.
Oh
Mr. Tomlin.
my. Mr. Tomlinson, say hello to YouTube.
Hello to YouTube.
Incredible.
Oh, it warms my heart to hear that voice. How are you, sir?
I figured out how to put it on speakerphone, even better.
That is even better.
Yeah, dude, I'm literally like, I just got home from swim practice with the knuckleheads, and I'm trying to drag like 3 people's worth of stuff inside of the house, but I was not gonna miss the launch of this glorious occasion. I told Tanya that I would make it, and so I'm here.
I didn't know you could swim.
Oh,
There's
I don't
Mr.
know how to
Wilson.
swim, but it's important that my kids know how to swim.
That's what the lessons are for, right?
Sorry, man. Tostitos, we're ready.
Should we do casual since we're going to talk?
Are you worried
Yeah.
about your ranking, Doctor?
I'm not
He's
worried about my
worried.
ranking. I'm worried because I'm terrible at this game, and it's stressful enough as it is.
No, you were just saying you were really good at it right before we got on.
I don't
Yeah.
I don't think that
You're
was
trying to be
true.
humble.
All right, Hodges, while yours downloads, I'm gonna do like
Yes,
a
sir.
casual without squad fill.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and yeah, we'll see how that goes. Just kind of keep us updated on the
I will be screeching in the background.
the files.
You let her
But
rip, Doctor.
yeah, so trying to just start something new. Novel study while playing my favorite games. And what
Yeah.
better way to start than, Call of Duty Black Ops 6 is particularly hot right now. So,
Yeah.
what better novel to pair that with than Slaughterhouse-Five, a novel about war, right?
Well, and you know what? People
very-
say it's a novel about war, but I always said that it's a 1969 semi-autobiographical science fiction infused anti-war novel by the author Kurt Vonnegut,
All right, so
and it followed
that's.
the life experiences. Oh,
Are you on Wikipedia right now?
Sounds like Wikipedia.
Sounds a lot like
No.
Wikipedia.
but I also say that this work has been called an
ChatGPT,
example.
give me a very insightful synopsis of
No.
Slaughterhouse-Five.
I've always said that the work has been called an example of unmatched moral clarity and one of the most enduring anti-war novels of all time.
That's. Are you suggesting those are your words?
When I was in 3rd grade, my teacher was home saying I was too Vonnegut pilled.
What does that mean?
Yeah, what does that mean?
It's in my veins. We know what we're talking about. Let's let her rip. Let's talk.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Kurt Vonnegut, 1969. Wilson, I heard you say that.
Yep.
What's like a general summary? We know it's kind of, based on the protagonist Billy Pilgrim.
Alpha male, right?
Okay.
Wait, no, actually not. No, not alpha male. It is the story of a man who is trying to slowly come to terms and process,
Got a contract here.
living through a mass extinction event, and it doesn't make sense because those types of things don't make sense, and that's what it's about.
Yeah, for me, I remember when we were talking about it, I had mentioned that it was kind of a hard read for me because I'm such a fan of organizational structure. It reminds me a lot Curious Incident of the Dog in the Nighttime, where it's just jumping all over the place. And in conversation with you, we found that is actually purposeful.
Yeah, it's kind of like the point, right? You know, when we're in a place, we are not all there, right? We're thinking about tomorrow, we're thinking about yesterday, we're thinking about 5 years from now, and 10 years in the past. And, you know, I think it's, you know, when I talk to my class about it, you know, it's trying to look at a person's life as if it's a collage right in front of you. And it trying to make everything make sense because people don't make sense. And I guess that's kind of what I love about it. And that's because the linear structures, I think, sometimes oversimplify it.
Oh no!
This book does a good job of.
What?
Get one?
No, I'm being attacked.
Get you some, Doctor. I'm at 9.
Oh no!
Reinforcements are coming.
Where'd it go? Where'd it go?
Remember, you gotta cook the grenades.
I interrupted you,
Just like all
Hodges,
those
as you
people in
were.
Dresden got-
As you were.
Just like all those people in
No,
Dresden
you're
got
good,
cooked.
man. No,
No?
that's one thing I also learned from Slaughterhouse-Five is cook the grenade. An infinite grenade. I guess you don't have an infinite grenade glitch for this game, do you, Doc?
I do not like Helldivers. What's interesting is the
It was a
scenario
golden age.
I was just in. How do you get up here? Oh, I'm dead. Nope. This game, and it's probably because I take it too seriously. It's like a palpable, noticeable change in heart rate when I'm being attacked. And so when you look at like the parallel of war,
Oh, sure.
I'm glad,
Do you
I'm glad this
wear an
guy's a
Apple
bot.
Watch?
I don't. I wear a Garmin, but I have played several times where it has told me, "Hey, relax."
I got a question for you
I
guys.
think you need to chill out. What you got?
I was just going to talk about the structure of the story, because I feel like for a lot of people, the structure, you know, we all have our experiences. Stories follow the same structure for the most part. If they're properly published, they're very linear, and the story is not that. So I was just wondering how you guys kind of piece together
Got a
the story
contract
when it's
here.
delivered in a, you know, unique way.
It was Tarantino before it was Tarantino.
True.
That is so real.
Wow.
What was your experience like with it, Tomlinson? Like, how did you parse through that? Because you know you're a history guy. How'd you encounter this? How'd you deal with that?
Well, I feel like probably I connected with the book before I would have considered myself a history guy, really. And so, like, I just connected with the way that it flowed, and I thought that the writing was so engaging, and I thought that it moved really quickly, and I laughed with it, and I thought it was like a really interesting story. I probably read it while I was in college, and just found it so like utterly fascinating, but also so real. And I think that I appreciated it more from that standpoint than now. Of course, like I look at it and I teach all of the stuff that's happening at like around the time that he's publishing it, and it fits so much better. I think now that I know that, but at the time I appreciated it as somebody that likes reading books.
Yeah, there's definitely a timeless like quality, I feel like, to the writing. But like to answer your question, Mr. Wilson, the structure of it, I think that's one of the things I found kind of comforting about it. Like I think even when I was in high school, I was in AP Lit when I read it for the first time, and I think what I found really refreshing about it is it was like a series. If you look at it like a series of vignettes that like accumulate individually and only make sense like later. You know, like you hear a story for the sake of hearing a story and you're like, okay, that'll probably be important later, I don't know, or it won't be. And I found that really refreshing, and like just experiencing trying to like learn about someone when you see all of their life at one time. All right, Dr. Walker, I am in. Check
Okay.
updates.
Hey,
Wait, you haven't been playing this whole
Walker.
time?
Dr. Walker, I got somebody who wants to say hey.
Oh my goodness. Hello.
You guys say. You're just gonna stand in silence.
What do you say?
You're on a YouTube live stream right now, Rhett. You are just
Rat rat.
your audience.
Say hello.
Rat rat.
Okay.
Man,
Stunned silence it is.
like I can't wait to do this with my children.
That was red, everybody.
I felt the silence though, like it was powerful silence.
Mm-hmm. There is power in silence.
Word.
Yeah. I also wanted to talk about just Billy Pilgrim, like this design, this character, because we talked about it's autobiographical. There's definitely we could psychoanalyze it to death, Kurt Vonnegut, right? But I just really love the name Billy Pilgrim. And
it's the most American name. It's
just like no one, literally, we've been reading it on our own in class, or reread a couple chapters together, and like no one has brought up the name Billy Pilgrim. I just love it because Billy, that's American. That's like Cowboy Billy. There's a million Billies. It's like the epitome of just like everyday normal guy, common man. And then you have Pilgrim, which if you think about what a pilgrim is,
literally nothing more American.
Hey Wilson, speak up just a little bit.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, no, I was just saying people associate pilgrim with like Thanksgiving and stuff, but like truly, if you actually know what a pilgrim is, it's someone who is on like a fated like mission, like they have like a divine mission that they need to accomplish, and so I just love that like that's the name. It's like combining this like, oh, there's something divine here, there's something like almost spiritual, like this mission, this protagonist, this like a pilgrim is totally a main character, at least in their own lives. And then you have this
there's definitely
Billy.
a pioneer element. Sorry, Kev. I know that there's like a pioneer element to me too, where it's like you're taking something that's completely uncertain and making something of it.
They're on me.
Yeah, no, you're totally right. I think the name Pilgrim at the end too, and then what's even like add on top of that, like the name Billy, like the part where he is cheating on his wife, as he says, for the first and only time. The woman that he is with is like, why do you call yourself Billy? And it's all Billy. Like, oh, so I appear friendly and I stick out. So it's like, what a nice like juxtaposition of like the mundane and the commercial, with, like, this idea of like this spiritual voyager.
I'm actually glad. I didn't think this was going to be brought up this early, but like his infidelity and like even just like his lack of relationships, because Justin, I mean Mr. Hodges, Baby J, you know what I call you outside.
Baby J, we can do it. We can do it out here.
But even earlier in AP Lit, we had a whole kind of unit built around existentialism, right? We read The Stranger, we read The Metamorphosis, Kafka, and we did a whole thing on existentialism, and like Slaughterhouse-Five is all about existentialism.
It really is. I agree, and I'll let you finish, but I'll say, I mentioned to my students, I'm like, oh, this at the amount of times I've mentioned The Stranger while describing things, and this, that we just did one giant like half a year about existentialism literature, so that was my bad, but also positive because it was fun.
Yeah, no, I mean, well, and just how existentialism is like the other side of the coin of like absurdity, just because Billy Pilgrim. Everyone's trying to find a way to cope, right, with just the absurdity of life. And Billy Pilgrim, we see that he does not have a lot of shields, I guess, right? Like, I feel like we all in life we kind of have these shields to try to ignore the absurdity or protect us from the true absurdity of life. But like, the shields that most people have, right? Like, oh, we try to love people, or like, a meaningful career, right?
Do you mean like vulnerabilities?
Yeah, like people usually tie to like maybe a strong faith they have or something, right, to kind of deal with existentialism and just like having a purpose. But I feel like Billy really doesn't have any of those things.
I think you're absolutely right. And when looking at this book as an existentialist book, and for Dr. Walker and Mr. Tomlinson, like this is where we've been at in AP Lit when reading The Stranger and The Metamorphosis earlier this year. We were talking about the difference between existentialism and essentialism, and existentialism is the idea that existence precedes essence. In other words, that your purpose When you are born, you are not born with a purpose. It's coming at things from the perspective that you are not born from a purpose, that you have to create a purpose. Or that you have a purpose forced onto you, as opposed to essentialism, which is that purpose precedes essence, that you were born. And it's about like navigating that like kind of late 20th century literature where it's like, oh, we are meaningless. So how do you find meaning in a meaningless world? Because, you know, so much of the messaging we have is so nihilistic. So we thought that was an important thing to like really dissect. And like this book, I feel like with Billy, you're right, Kevin, that like he goes through his life authentically. I think like authentically detached. Like early in his life, he's 18 or 19 or 20. However, whatever age he is. He's a child.
Confirming kill.
And sees a massacre in front of him, and then tries to reason with that the rest of his life. And it makes it hard for him to find meaning. So how does he do it? And it turns into these like delusions that are beautiful. And that is, it's just really interesting, and that's why I felt like so drawn to it, so real. Like, because a lot of it doesn't necessarily have meaning, but it feels impactful, and, there's a lot of little truths in there, but we can get more specific.
Well, I mean, for me, like, when you read it, we know it's metafiction, right? Essentially, Kurt Vonnegut is a prisoner of war, is essentially telling his story vicariously through, the protagonist of this book. But there's like a level of authenticity for me with it, I think, in that humor for me is often like a coping mechanism. And so through the avenue of satire, like really shedding light on war and trauma and that sort of human experience, I think gave it like a refreshing look, because for me in my AP classes, we talk a lot about, this sort of human experience, human condition, how do we know right from wrong, things like that. And so to read this and know, hang on, where's that? There it is.
Enemy
Watch
intel
out.
located. Capture and secure the intel point to discover the next gas spread.
Like, to know that this is like a commentary on that through the lens of satire, I think is really healthy, because, and I'm gonna crouch here so I can focus, but we talk about in AP the value of comedians, right? And do they, if you're a satirist, you're not necessarily, I don't know if you would fit that genre of comedy per se, but do comedians get sort of a grayer area for commentary on sometimes sensitive topics, and is that healthy and necessary in a society? And I think we see, the conflict. Well, we lost Hodges, but I think we see the conflict.
Oh my.
Welcome back.
Literally everything is crashing and burning over here on my end, y'all.
That's
I
okay.
don't know what's
It's
going
like
on.
Dresden, huh?
But we see the
Hey.
I see what you did there. But you see that sort of conflict with, this book, and, in a period where it's being banned, and, why. It's a pretty hot button topic.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, it's funny. I don't know if either of y'all did earlier. I think we were talking about, I said, hey, do we want to do a section on like looking
Got a
into
contract
reasons
here.
why this book was banned? And be real with you, I didn't go look up the specific thing again, but I do remember listening to kind of a breakdown on it as part of a larger podcast about Slaughterhouse, and it was always like, oh, it's sexually explicit content.
Because of the descriptions of his infidelity?
The description of his infidelity, the one single brief paragraph describing his honeymoon, and the one where they are at the zoo. Now, for anybody who's read that, I would pose to you the question, because the standard for obscenity or pornography, sexually
This one sucks.
things.
Sorry.
If anybody would like to point out to me anything that is just like gratuitously sexual for like nothing more than pleasure in those scenes, I would like to see it, because they're all pretty off-putting, if I would say, and clearly advance the themes of the novel. Like,
is that why it was banned? It was for the. It said
that's one reason.
particularly-
The other reason is the cussing.
Huh.
Is the
See,
language?
I'm so.
Yes, sir.
I think I give people that censor stuff too much credit.
You do.
Because well, no, because I just assumed that it was on the banned book list because of like it going against the popular narrative at the time that war was good.
Well,
That may have been an extent. I think it's like finding a. I don't know. Maybe Tomlinson could talk more to this, but I think it was like finding, reasons that were within existing framework because it was being targeted because it was anti-war or anti-status quo. I don't know. I personally don't. But I know the stated reason.
Well, I was gonna say, Rob,
the specific historical context within that time frame of being published in late 1968, it was becoming much more mainstream to oppose the war, specifically throughout like 1967 and 1968 as they started to change like the deferment process, and like kids who were graduating from college who were from
The enemy
more
is no
affluent
longer
families
tracking you.
were
You
going
lost
to
them.
no longer be protected from the draft.
Mm-hmm.
Opposition to the war itself was becoming far more prominent.
well,
it would have been,
even
I
with
think,
soldiers coming home, like not being welcomed, in the Vietnam era, etc. Like,
well,
yeah.
and I think for a lot of people who are on stream, I feel like it's kind of mainstream now for people to be like, war is bad. But Rob, I'm glad you brought that up about like the affluency and like Vietnam, because when this book came out, Vietnam's going on, and it is World War II was known as an honorable, good war, right? And it was America's going to war. It's for a good reason, and we're doing good things. And during Vietnam, all these World War II vets, it's their kids going to Vietnam, and they have a very different view of like what war is and why we go to war. So yeah, I'm glad that you brought up like the white, well, I guess I'm saying white, but like these suburban kids, all of a sudden are protesting in the streets. They're the ones getting assaulted and harassed by cops, and I think they said at one point there was like 500,000 people protesting the war, like in DC, right?
I mean, it's definitely like the rise of, as far as I know, and Tomlinson will know better than me, but the fact that the affluent, regardless of race, but yeah, you're right, mostly white, starts saying, "Hey, this is bad," and it triggers a response.
It's all the boomer kids that grew up, and they grew up within the lens and context of the Cold War, and by the time that they were teenagers, that was all that they had ever known, and they were just exhausted of it. I mean, you think of like the kids
Sounds
who are coming of age, and like the things that we look at that are these kind of anomalies about the world around us in terms of like technology and all of the COVID stuff and things like the Patriot Act and like invasions of personal freedom. And they're just like completely like they have an entirely different perspective and stance on these things than the people that lived through the time before. And so these boomers only ever knew the Cold War. They're exhausted of it, and then they're like, "You want us to go fight this war that we don't understand?" And they just completely reject it.
Well, and then also, this is why this book made a splash, because Rob, you're right. There was already like anti-war sentiment out there, but I mean, try to pick someone else. Kurt Vonnegut, he was a vet who fought in World War II. No one could downplay his experiences. No one could attack him for being anti-war because of like his experiences and what he went through. So like having his voice, someone who did fight in World War II, being from that generation and being like, hey, war is not all triumph. It's crazy. Like this is insanity, and there is going to be a defeat. I think that was really important, and why this book made a splash, because it gave some credibility, I guess, to those arguments from a different generation.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, sure. I think too, like I wonder too, the idea that World War II is viewed as like an honorable war by the people who fought it. I wonder, and I think it's like kind of jives with the idea of what Tomlinson said of, by the late 60s, the idea that war is bad was way more mainstream, but that was a kind of turning point that started back with World War I, and even before if you're talking about Europe, but like
Great work.
that at this point when this book is published, it's about war is bad, but I feel like what this book does is it articulates why and how in a way that goes well beyond just the general idea of like, oh, we need peace, which is a lovely sentiment, but like in the day-to-day and like, you know, just the way the world works, like there's going to be conflict. But what he does, I think, is articulate, like, he's talking about mass numbers. You know, that's the word he specifically uses in the first chapter, is like, my children are and I think that's what he's talking about, like this way that industrialized war, and he's able to articulate it in a way that like Wilfred Owen and Ernest Hemingway and like those World War I era authors were trying to. And or like Virginia Woolf, if we're talking about like Mrs. Dalloway, it's a whole stream of consciousness novel, which was very radical for like the 1910s, that she's writing in the way she's thinking. But like in this one, you know, it's not only stream of consciousness, but it is like, oh, I am going to simultaneously inhabit multiple, like, you know, each third of my life in depth at the same time, and like try to reason with what I just saw. So, like, yeah, like, I think that's why this book made a splash, I guess is what I'm trying to say. Is I think it, like, laid it out in a way that was comfortable and funny, but at the same time, like, kind of terrifying.
Bring it in, recon.
Speaking of terrifying, Dr. Walker, what's your KD right now? What's going on, man?
Well, this is a bot lobby, and it's still not going great because I'm terrible. But
and if I could talk COD, Dr. Walker, so apparently validating my files uninstalled Warzone.
Nice.
So reinstalling it currently. If you'd like to play Black Ops 6, we could pivot, or we could wait a minute for me to catch up to you, because I have no idea. I'm at 30% on. I have no idea what happened.
Yeah, I mean, I like the conversation. I will tell you, it is hard to play. And
this
focus at the same time, but like, what a parallel to, you know, the construct of the book. I'm like, I can't think because I'm surrounded, and you know, when you look at, you know, Billy Pilgrim being, how's it phrased, unstuck in time, and just going everywhere. Like, I know this seems super cheesy, but the parallels to this. There's a most wanted enemy over there. Are wild.
In some write-up where I was talking to someone about this, I was like, oh, it's very fitting that we were talking about Slaughterhouse-Five while playing not a war game, but a carnage simulator. Because this is just senseless violence of senseless death, and that is what this book is trying to explore, like the science of senseless killing. And doing that with, you know, irony and humor and absurdity and senselessness in different forms.
Yeah.
I really like. Well, I guess actually before I share that, does anyone have like a favorite passage from the book or favorite part of the book that they want to share? I don't say that.
I'm waiting for this thing to download. I am talking too much.
I
if anybody else
think you're doing excellent. I think so. Oh, back to the unstuck in time thing. Like that last game, I did not perform well, and so then you go to the gulag, and then you get an opportunity to like get back into the game, and then even if you're completely gone, yeah.
I always liked going to the gulag. You know. You
liked going to the gulag in Call of Duty?
The idea of the gulag. You know, you get, you know,
like a redo.
Work out a little bit.
Throw rocks at people.
Read some books. Make some friends. You know, I never thought the gulag sounded that bad, especially in the game.
It's kind of like the way the hobo, you know, says like, hey, this train's pretty good. You know, this boxcar, all these people dying around me, it's fine. Do you think that's bad? See homelessness? The gulag's comfy.
YouTube chat says their knowledge is mighty.
Gas is closing in. Get to the new safe zone.
What's my else account?
Oh, but even if you're like dead in the game, Like, if anyone on your team is still alive,
Station prices have been
now they're buying you back, and you never respawn in the same place.
Dr. Walker, I'm gonna be honest. The only way I'm buying you back is if I got a coupon. Okay.
Well, funny you should say that because there's a fire sale at the buy station right now.
Hey, you gotta spend money to save money, Kevin. Get it.
This is called a bad investment.
I have faith. Yeah, no. I think the whole. I would like to. My favorite passage, if I could talk, like going back, thinking about it. I really like the way, Kurt Vonnegut is this book is probably, it's the least sci-fi-y book that he wrote, maybe.
Agreed.
But I do love his science fiction writer tendencies throughout it, because I feel like science fiction writers are always trying to cook up, the next Star Wars, or the next Dune, the next allegory for, a war for oil, or the next allegory for, wealth inequality, or the next, so on and so forth, addiction, all the things. And, the way he, throughout the book, is kind of like casting all these things out, the way that Kilgore Trout, the science fiction writer in the book, which is very definitely a standard for Vonnegut, is like, oh yeah, he wrote a book about this and no one read it. He wrote a book about this and no one read it. All these different ideas, the way he kind of builds this kind of science fiction world around all these things that is inherently a social critique, but also at the same time a love of lasers and aliens.
Tralfamadorians.
Really the Tralfamadorians, and I would love for us to get into them, but it's about couching these very real observations from very real things he has seen.
Yep.
Into, digestible, things you want to read. You don't realize the impact of it after you've read it. But I think that's my experience. Every time I reread it, I realize. But my favorite scenes are those, where he describes the science fiction book plots. And as well as early on in the book, when Billy Pilgrim first becomes unstuck in time, or the second time he comes unstuck in time, where it talks about, I call them breadcrumbs for science fiction and fantasy writers, oh, we're doing world building, so I'm going to include this cool little thing that I'm only going to tell you a little bit about. But the part where he says, oh, he was coming unstuck in time and he went after his death, violet light, and he went before birth, and it was red light, and sounds. And so you think about that, violet light as death and red light as birth. So that is basically positioning the human existence as a light wave. Roy G. Biv, which that's literally one sentence in the book, and I think about it. I've thought about it every day since 12th grade. The way he does that, just haphazardly, there's no point to it. It's not a big thing later in the book. That's what I like.
Incoming fire!
The
That's
incident.
That's awesome.
You said you want to talk about the Tralfamadorians. Got him.
Wait, how'd you get him?
Sorry, there was a car running around me, and I baited him, put a landmine down so his car blew up.
Your stream is my stream on, or my version of your stream has fallen behind. I'm restarting.
The Tralfamadorians. When I remember first reading that, and to me, the easiest parallel, the first thing that came to mind, I'm down, was, as funny as it is, Independence Day. The alcohol, the alcoholic pilot who is, recounting his, and he's, recounting the time he was abducted by aliens, and he's excited about, feedback, or revenge rather, and hang tight. Nobody says anything, and they call him weird, whatever, but just insight into that sort of traumatic experience of, you know,
Waypoint marked.
Yeah.
he's sort of vindicated by the end of the movie that, wow, this was an authentic experience, and, you know, the human condition, we should seek perspective and not, you know, immediate objection sort of thing.
You're actually Randy Quaid's character in Independence Day, and man, Kevin, next year, AP Lit, I'm gonna miss it, but man, maybe we should make Independence Day a required part of the curriculum to watch. It's literally the movie I've seen the like highest number of times in my entire life. You are absolutely right, because that character in Independence Day, for people who don't know, I guess we got to tell the the chat.
The general plot, I guess, for most of them.
Well,
when did that movie come out?
The character, because he is Billy Pilgrim, right? Like, Randy Quaid's character, I can't remember exactly. All I remember is his son's calling him Dad. So, Dad is very clearly like an older guy. He's an alcoholic. He's, and the first time you see him, he's a pilot crop dusting on a field because he's wasted. And then when he lands his plane in the middle of the road, after, because he's seen his son driving by screaming at him, he cuts out, he's like, "Hey, Sean!" or whatever. He's like drinking. Kid's like, "Hey, Dad, you crop dusted the wrong field." "Oh, really? Oh, crap." And he doesn't really care. That's Billy Pilgrim. That's Billy Pilgrim as an old man. That's the exact type of image that Vonnegut paints of him, and I think that's what I really enjoy about this book, is that he's giving context to that type of character. Because, like, that dude in that movie, like, in the past, he said he'd been abducted by aliens. Turns out he was right. So he's been through a highly
Gotta start somewhere.
He's been through that trauma, and no one cares, so he doesn't care, and he just
Enemies are dropping into the area.
Billy
Watch
didn't
the
turn into
sky.
an
Coordinates
alcoholic.
marked.
Even worse, he turned into an optometrist. And he, but like he,
It's down to you, soldier.
That's a great comparison, dude.
Thank you.
Because this book, I think what it does is it like gives you the DNA for a guy like that.
Yeah.
Who calls into radio shows about it. That's what it is. That's what he's trying to show. And that's what he's saying, I think, that, the senselessness of carnage of industrial warfare does to humanity is it reduces us to that.
Hang on, I got a team pushing me.
Hostile UAV.
I don't know. Now my install is stuck at 30 on Warzone. I don't know what happened.
Hostile grenade!
The universe conspired
Enemy advanced UAV overhead.
against me.
I mean, I think you're doing pretty good on the mic. You're carrying your weight. Yeah, you're like those guys in the military that are back, like in the U.S., and they're on, controlling drones and giving like intel.
Hey, didn't you say a family member of yours? Oh, this is not good.
Oh!
Hang tight.
Yeah, you want to talk about my uncle?
Yeah, like met Kurt Vonnegut.
Enemy UAV overhead.
Let's talk about
Hostile
Uncle Tom.
UAV in the area. Enemy
my
advanced UAV
my
is
dad's
active.
youngest brother, he's passed away. And when he was in his late 40s and the late 90s, but earlier in his life, he was a really interesting dude. He was a sci-fi writer, he was a journalist, and
Sorry, go ahead, I died.
no, you're good.
I'm unstuck in time.
Quietly.
So it goes.
So
That's pretty funny. That was good.
and so on. He would get into a lot of weird stuff. He met a lot of weird people, like in the rest of the family. Like my dad and my older uncle, my dad's older brother, Senator Uncle Mike, were into way more normal stuff. So they always like left Uncle Tom to do his own thing. Anyway, in chapter 1 of the book, you may recall that he said, Kurt Vonnegut writes, "I have a disease that involves alcohol and the telephone late at night," where he just randomly calls people.
Yep.
So supposedly, my Uncle Tom is one of those dudes that he was calling at night. He made that claim to my Uncle Mike he was on the phone. Who are you on the phone with? Oh, I'm on the phone with Kurt Vonnegut. BS. Okay, well, prove it. And he hands him the phone. Says, hey, who is this? He says, hey, it's Kurt Vonnegut.
That's
and
wild.
That is a state senator. Yeah, a state senator, you know, he said it. So, you know, you tell me.
That's cool.
Yeah, that is cool.
Yeah. Now, unfortunately, so Uncle Tom passed away when I was 9. I have so many questions now. I have
Enemy
so
soldier
many
incoming.
questions that the rest of my family never asked.
If this may be too personal, but if he were alive, what would you ask him?
About? No, it's not. I mean, especially in relation to Kurt. If we're talking about Kurt Vonnegut, first off, I'd want to know if he met him in person, and two, I would want to know, like, where, because it definitely was not. They didn't hang out. If they ever met up and hung out, it wasn't at an actual like place where you're supposed to hang out. You know, like,
Right.
It wasn't a bar or a restaurant. It was like by a dumpster, but a cool dumpster.
Right.
You know.
Like the one the Ninja Turtles would hang by? Oh, that's a sewer.
mayhaps.
Never mind.
Perhaps.
What a slip.
I mean, but many such cases, like, yeah, you think so. And that's kind of the thing that I think Vonnegut does a really good job to illuminate is like because, you know, Billy Pilgrim's a weird dude, you know, he's not a guy that you like, you're pulling for him as a protagonist.
Right.
And he's like the guy you're with, but like there's nothing inherently endearing about him outside, I guess, of his innocence that he manages to somehow maintain.
Is there a level of empathy because of his experience in war?
Yeah, he's just kind of sad. He's like a puppy. He's not someone you cheer for. You're just like, God, I hope you're okay. And I don't know. I think that's the kind of guy that Kurt Vonnegut does a really good job of
Spotted vehicle.
illustrating.
Contract here.
And he does it through, you know, I think very vividly. I think he goes in so hard. Probably the thing that Vonnegut writes about the most in the novel is people roasting Billy.
Yeah.
Whether it be Barbara in the future, like saying, you know, as Kurt Vonnegut writes, turns her into and I'm intentionally breaking my no cussing rule because this is a quote. The stress of managing him turns his daughter Barbara into a quote bitchy flibberty gibbet. Even during the war, the Brits are disgusted by his appearance. The Germans make fun of him. The German civilians, the Nazi soldiers make fun of his appearance. The German civilians are offended by his appearance. And he, you know, so that's the type of guy that we're getting inside the mind of because, to my mind, that's the type of person that makes up most of the people we encounter. And it's a very weird point of view, but I think he does a good job of articulating and giving context to that very weird, somewhat Midwestern or New England point of view that, like, common American, which is this kind of, like, absurd contradiction in his mind, at least. I think he does a good job of illustrating it. Through very absurd, non-related.
Well, and from the perspective of somebody that's... Wait, what is this? From somebody that's experienced that, you know, when you look at other television shows and literature, like the sort of stereotypical American and how they're portrayed in certain historical time periods, like, I mean, even look at The Simpsons and Family Guy, right? It's the stay-at-home mom, the overweight, dumb dad who, you know, married way out of his league, you know, and so when you look at literature as a form of social commentary and perception, you know, yeah, he's showing the reader, like, you know, despite sacrifices, look how war vets are perceived by the public.
Yeah, and that's what I was going to ask you, Mr. Tomlinson, yeah, you're right, this is the late 60s. Anti-war sentiment is not unusual.
I'm hit.
And people are even veterans, you know, like, you know, when they come. Where is this book in that? Or, like, is there any comment this book is making? Like, how does this factor into that? I guess I don't know. Is this book make a comment on that in any way, or like, where are you at on how soldiers.
Was that for me? How to start?
No, you're good. Yeah, I mean, I was just curious for you, like, right, like in the late '60s, you know, when soldiers would come home and stuff, it was not uncommon. There'd be protests and people spit on them, etc., etc. We've seen the videos. Like,
Right.
what is, you know, and I don't. Do you think this book is making comments like pro-soldier, like to inspire empathy in soldiers, you know, or
Enemy
soldiers?
intel
Do
located.
you think that's something he was
Capture
doing,
and
or
secure the
where do you
intel
think this
point
book
to
is
discover
on
the
that?
next
Because obviously
gas
it's
spread.
protesting war, but I don't think it's promoting that.
I think to an extent it's lamenting the decay of American society. And so, like you see at the end, where he's talking about the assassination of Martin Luther King Jr. and then Bobby Kennedy, and it's like every day I hear about more bodies killed by military science in Vietnam, and so it goes. And it's just like very, I guess this is life now.
Yeah, yeah.
Hang,
Is that the decay? Like,
hang
do you
tight
think
for a
that
second.
that's
Y'all keep
mirrored-
going.
Go ahead. Yeah, you're good.
Jump back.
In your mind, is that like, is that reflected elsewhere? Like, how do you think that was received? You know, as a limit, did this book inspire any real change in your mind? And I know that's a really big question, or was it part of a bigger change?
Sorry, I was.
Oh no. I think
Nothing?
my
Enemy
internet's
dropping
going out.
into the AO.
Hey, I can hear you.
Can anyone hear me?
Yeah.
I can hear you, Kevin. Yeah, there you go. You went out a little bit. I thought. What were you?
Oh, no.
Sorry, were you gonna say something, dude? My bad.
Sorry, I'm out of breath. I was
Chat
in the
requested
bathroom.
everybody's mics get turned up, so I had to step away to do that really fast.
Oh. Thank
So
you.
hopefully that's a little
appreciate
better.
That's cool. Thank you, Mrs. Walker, for that suggestion. I know she's in the chat somewhere.
Enemy UAV
Subjects
overhead.
front.
I did want to talk about before I ran away, and this is,
Incoming fire.
might
Oh
be
my gosh.
that's war and whatnot. And my favorite passage in the book is
Yeah, hit me.
the whole. I mean, just the whole sequence about the movie and war and like it all being like played backwards and just like them complaining flying backwards and then them going over like Germany and like sucking up the bullets and the bombs and like restoring the city. That whole sequence, I wish I should have
Well done, soldier. Check
pinned
your
it.
map
Oh,
for
I-
the next
I
gas
got it.
spread
But I mean,
location.
you guys don't
Got a
want me to read
contract
a whole,
here.
2 pages or whatever. But I just love that whole sequence of just
Yeah.
like a totally different perspective of like the effect that war has on the cities, and just like, oh, if like we were using this energy, if we were using our intentions, if we were doing things somehow differently, like how you can take away all this pain and damage, and just the absurdity of it. Is it absurd to see it all played backwards, or is it more absurd that it's played forward in the beginning? Like in the first place.
Yes. It seems very Monty Python to me. Like that whole image. It's all very visual. Right before he gets abducted by the UFO. And yeah, no, I completely agree with you. I think that is one of the high points for me of the book. That whole, because he does it. I think it's also the length of it too, because everything in this book is so quick.
Watch your target ID. punk.
So many, like, you literally traverse decades within 3 sentences. But that whole scene, that's probably one of the longest sustained scenes in this book.
Yeah.
And the most detailed thing. And it's the absurdity of watching, because he's sitting there half drunk waiting for a UFO that he somehow knows is coming. I don't know why. Wakes up in the middle of the night. And he's like, oh, I watched this movie forward, and then I watched it backwards. And then the UFO was here, and I was ready. And like, and it really does. It goes on for like 1.5 to 3 pages, which is about as long as anything gets attention for in this book, which is also another like surprisingly modern thing about it.
Spotted vehicle.
Good work. Hold down the point until it's secure.
What celebrity do you think looks the most like a
Friendly
Tralfamadorian?
loadout drops on the way.
Watch it.
I guess for the chat, we need to describe a Tralfamadorian. It is a green hand with a skinny arm on top of a plunger with an eye in the middle of its palm. And if I was going to say Who reminds me most of that? I'm gonna go with.
I'll fly.
You've earned a peek at the next gas spread.
I'm gonna go with Justin Timberlake.
Really?
I was literally gonna pick a different member of NSYNC. That's crazy.
Were you
I
gonna
was
say Lance Bass? Were you gonna say Lance Bass? Because I was gonna say Lance Bass, but I didn't think the chat would know Lance
Oh.
Bass.
They might. Chad, do you know who Lance
No.
Bass is?
I don't know who Lance Bass is.
They don't. They are not
Okay.
Lance Bass pilled.
No. He's kind of like Niall Horan, but before Niall.
What?
You know, like One Direction. That's a closer
Yeah.
touchstone for them.
You're right. You are younger than me in this.
He's
when I
he's like the Lance Bass was like the cute one, and then probably everyone that's currently on the stream, all of our moms were devastated when he came out as gay because he was the cute
when he
one.
was gay. Yep. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I just remember my mom being devastated, my 48-year-old mother, and I'm like, this is weird.
She had her shot, dude.
Yeah, she's like, why is it always the men that know how to groom themselves, you know? So
Strong
Interesting.
correlation in such case.
Rob, do you want to weigh in on this?
Sorry, I've been kind of like in and out here. We literally just were putting the kids down to bed. What's up?
My man's on the move.
don't wanna
Podcast.
Chat
Fuck
says
no.
Lance is love, Lance is life.
Enemy UAV.
There we
The
go.
last thing that I
Shout
heard
out,
was
Steele.
about, like, that we were comparing Commodorians to Justin Timberlake, and then Kevin Wilson is very aware of what's going on with One Direction.
That's
Yeah.
what. Yeah, you missed
you've
nothing.
missed
You're
nothing.
very efficient.
Oh, okay. Well, so I am not as aware of what's going on with One Direction. I literally, like, when I started substitute teaching in like 2013, and I'd have to like write my name on the board, old school, and then the kids would be like, "Are you related to Louis Tomlinson?" I was like, "Who?" Like 3 times
he's the
before I
best
ended up looking it up.
Louis the best one.
Is that
The best
is he
Tomlinson?
One Direction as well?
No, the best in 1D. Come on now.
Oh. I was like, let's get real for a second.
Yeah, listen,
Superseded only.
I'm looking to start divisive
And I'm dead.
commentary in the stream. But yeah, Louis is definitely the best one, and I stand by that.
Stay sharp.
What do you think is like the number one takeaway, or is it even possible to pinpoint?
I think
You know.
I'm going to interrupt your question,
Okay.
and I'm going to say that we have to phrase it differently. What is your takeaway, right? Because there is so like, dude, this book is an onion, man. There is just layers and layers
true.
and layers, and it's like, is it an allegory for PTSD? Is it just, you know, are there really aliens? I mean, there's so much to peel back here. I do want to say this because I've been kind of sitting on it, because you guys have said the phrase "unstuck"
Yep.
a few times throughout this, and I think something that I just really connect with for Slaughterhouse-Five is this, just like the treatment of time.
My station right
And I
here.
was it was awful. I tried kind of to explain my thought process today in
Tried
class,
so hard
and
and
it did not land at all.
got so far,
Uh,
but in the end, it didn't
it-
even matter.
Did it not matter in the end? So it goes.
Sorry,
are
Mr.
you
Wilson, keep going. That was a
quoting
Linkin Park
Linkin
song.
Park?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, keep going.
We are, yeah. They're Tralfamadorian.
Jeez Louise.
Yeah.
Shout out to Chester.
all this-
But like,
Shout
no,
out.
just like the treatment of time, because I could not, I failed so badly in class trying to explain it, and I just kind of gave up on it. But like, and maybe this is how you guys feel too. This book does a really good job of dealing with time, because as I'm getting, you know, I'm in my 30s now. I'm with the cool kids on the stream,
Dark.
and like, I feel very adult in
Uh-oh.
1 minute,
I
and
think
then I
this is
feel
weird.
like a kid in
Yeah.
the next. And it's just like, you know, I mean, it's just Billy Pilgrim's experience, like people, places, memories, the ideas of what's going to come ahead of for us. Like, it's all very interchangeable, and like, experience is not linear. And I feel like as human beings, we want to make it linear, but like, even when I'm like in class, like when I'm speaking to a kid, I feel oftentimes like a
Hey,
kid
requesting
myself,
UAV.
Yeah,
you know?
I think that's what makes
and-
the job so fulfilling. Like, I feel like I would be miserable if it didn't afford me an opportunity to,
Incoming
you know, have that level of vulnerability.
Neutralized.
let my guard down
Well,
and just engage with people.
Yeah, I mean, well, it's just that going back to that complexity, you know, where it's like I am a kid inside of me. I am still 8 years old, and I'm still 18, and then I'm still 23, and I'm, you know, and I'm 30, and then I just know, like, talking to students sometimes I can see like, oh, they're going to be an adult soon too, like in the blink of an eye. And this book just does such a good job of expressing multitudes at the same time.
Yeah.
I hope that makes sense. I think I did better than how I was trying in class today. I totally butchered it, and the kids were like, you're it's not working. But for me, that's what I really got out of it. Is like we're all existing at the same time.
Yeah. What's the Sonder, right? Like the realization, the recognition that everybody that you see has, you know, a life equally or more complex and intricate than your own. Right?
Yeah,
and like
man.
when you recognize that, like it's a unique feeling. You know, every single person you pass on the road on the way to work has their own family, their own responsibilities, their own schedule. And I don't know, it's kind of surreal. But I like that.
So that was my big takeaway, just like the play on time and just how we perceive time differently.
Yeah. Well, even the commentary on death, right? Like the Tralfamadorians and how they, you know, their recognition of death is it's also just a moment in time. Whereas, you know, for us, is it, you know, you get the philosophical discussions of, is it final? Is it a moment in time? And so again, for me, that just goes back to the sort of authenticity of the text. I think is very refreshing.
Well, and I also think a lot about like if anyone's familiar, if they've read the comic book or maybe seen the movie adaptation of Watchmen, like, you know, do the ends justify the means, right?
Yeah.
And if we're looking in the context of like war and stuff, it's like, oh, well, like we're gonna kill a bunch of people, we're maybe gonna cross some lines, we're gonna break some rules, but if all these things we're doing, if it justifies the end result, which is something good, well, is it okay? And I feel like this book definitely kind of aligns with like, you know, Watchmen, which is, you know, it never ends.
Yeah.
Right?
That's
It's just,
how, yeah. Can y'all hear me, by the way?
Yes.
Yeah,
Sounds like you're in the bathtub.
You sound like you're about to speak Latin in the what's that place where all the Senate speak? The Forum.
In the Curium, in the Forum, the Curia, yeah.
No. But go on now.
I'm now on an earbud for whatever reason. It cut out on my computer my ability to speak to you, but I could hear you through the stream, and I
actually did that.
with you.
I kicked you.
That's fair.
I hacked your system.
That's totally fair, dude. I think you're totally spot on with all of that, and you're absolutely right that I think that is what this does a good job. This book does a good job of trying to make, like, it takes something, like, I guess Vonnegut, you know, as he says in chapter 1, I've been trying to write this book for 20 years, and it's because he's trying to explain something that cannot be explained.
Yeah.
And he does, and this is as close as he can get, and the only way he can do it is by this, like, temporal collage of different moments throughout this person's life, told out of order for sometimes no seeming particular reason, because, like, when you put two unlike things from the same person together, they are connected in some way, and it's up to you to find it.
Yeah.
And it's up to us to make sense of all this. And that is, like, his thing. And the way Billy Pilgrim does it is, well, one, he comes back and he becomes, like, you know, a capitalist boss and runs a business empire. He's got himself a nice car, you know, a marriage that he describes as bearable. And he grows old and survives a plane crash and, you know, is screaming into telephones at random people and on radio stations. And that is the type of person that he's trying to depict. And I think what he's trying to depict is, you know, what he considers typical American. And and it's a hard thing to explain outside of these very weird, you know, series of pictures. But yeah, sorry, that was, I could hear you, but I couldn't talk, and that's everything I think I had. But you're right on, and I think you did a good job explaining it, and I hope your kids watch this.
I'm adding to my notebook as you speak, Justin.
Okay. cash.
But it is. We've been playing a while. Do we want to wrap up? Are we feeling good? Do we want to keep the ball rolling? How do you guys?
I mean, I'm always good. I can talk and I can wrap up. And I'm sorry that I wasn't able to Call of Duty. Like, I don't understand.
Yeah, we'll make
I
it
do have a
work.
question.
This won't be the
in
last
my
time we
head-
do this.
In
No,
my
I'm
head,
not.
is you're currently sitting in a dark esports room at the school. Is that true?
It's my basement, which is essentially a dark esports room with a turtle. I have a turtle tank down here. Yeah, I'm chilling with Tyrion.
Are you wearing
He's
shoes?
pissed. No, what? The only reason I'm wearing pants is because this is school adjacent. Like, that's all I'm saying.
Well, Wilson
Like,
said he was
yeah,
going to
my
stream
students
from his bathtub. And
Yeah,
I'm
like a little
glad-
bubble bath on Friday night. I'm not gonna let the stream get on the way of that.
Are you under 1,000 rose petals in the tub?
Is that an American Beauty
I'm
reference?
taking the over.
That didn't
Yeah,
count.
he is American Beauty.
That, you know what? I was going to add that to the band name list, but I feel like that's probably already taken. But
Yeah. Also,
yeah.
I don't want to be associated with that movie. It's deviant.
that, well, yeah, that's a different stream, I think. I think for the context of the themes I wanted to talk about for this, like I think
Yes.
we really covered like the main things. My main hope is that anybody that watches this sees, the parallel between the sort of like trauma, PTSD, high heart rate you feel when you play games like this, comparative
Yeah.
to, in such a rudimentary capacity, what it's like to actually live through it. Like, I can't even fathom, what that experience is like. And so, for Kurt
And I think
Vonnegut to
that's
have
the
that,
point, right?
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Like, that's the point. He's trying to help you fathom the unfathomable
Yeah,
while hoping you never experience it.
and it's
'Cause
in
you get
such
that
a
part too, through
beautiful
the-
way.
Well, and I'm just. This has been such a nice experience because love you guys, love the literature. But also, I feel like it's gonna be nice that Miss Chastain's not gonna be alone this year for, military recognition night. Now that we've all served.
Oh, and Call of Duty, I don't know if that counts.
I will be going to the
No.
VA and asking for.
Yeah.
Hey, chat
don't
wants a
have to
bedtime
start
story.
Oh, bedtime story. That
Read
means-
Slaughterhouse-Five.
Uh,
Or finish it.
Yeah.
all right, I've got it. This is the bedtime story, chat.
Get you some.
So, there once was a cave with a group of dwellers shackled inside of this cave, and their only perception of truth was based upon the shadows cast on the cave walls from this fire. Well, one of them breaks free from his shackles, escapes the cave, is sort of blinded by the reality of truth and the sunlight and this sort of enlightenment, goes out, sees that what they perceived as truth was not actually accurate, and so he re-enters the cave to tell his peers that what they perceive as this sort of universal understanding of truth is not real, and they freak out and they kill him. Good night.
Sounds a
They
lot.
beat him to death with a rock.
They do.
This sounds
Call
very
that-
similar to.
So it goes. So it goes, baby.
A little allegory of the cave, little Play-Doh action for you.
I'm playing with some Play-Doh over here. You guys got
Yeah.
some?
Non-toxic
Yeah.
Play-Doh. Love that.
What's up, Seal?
Alright.
Yeah, Seal gets it.
All right,
Hey.
is this where we end it?
As the cool kids say, GG's. I'm not wearing a cap when I say that. I think that's right.
Love you
Hashtag
guys.
YOLO. Yep.
That was lit, dog.
Go read something.
Yeah.
Good night.
Later.
Diversify your portfolio.